Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 7. Pam shook her head. Lane, I don't like this at all. I tried to smile. I'm not too partial to it either. Don't push it, Rex. Her gun didn't waver. Tell me about... She had begun to raise her voice, but Lane rested his hand on her shoulder and looked about. She followed his line of vision, then nodded. I think it's best we take this elsewhere. As that looked as close to a reprieve as I was gonna get, I nodded in agreement. Let's go. Klaus sneered down at me. I don't trust him. What if he has dark gifts? Lane rolled his eyes. Cardinal's blood, Klaus. Can it? Without much help on my part, Pam pulled me to my feet. She didn't pull her gun off me, so I was very careful and slow in setting my coat in position and smoothing out the wrinkles. Where to, my dear? You'll find out when we get there. Faye, settle our tab and meet us there. Roger. Nice and easy, Rex. Pam forced a smile for the other freelancers in the midnight sun. Very few of them had turned around where she drew her gun, but a bunch more had noticed the click of the bolter's safety coming off. It's odd how such a little metallic sound can cut through the din of a bar and attract attention. Noticing that sort of thing is, for freelancers, a survival trait. So is evasion. But as I preceded Pam into the street, I decided that my best bet was to do what she wanted me to do. She was jumpy enough that any odd action on my part might spook her. Pam Afton shot straight enough that she'd cut me in half with slugs from the bolter before I had a chance to get away. In addition to having to worry about her reactions, I didn't know what Lane and Klaus were carrying for hardware concealed beneath their long coats. Klaus was a sure bet for an MP-105 machine pistol, and the big question with him was whether or not he had fitted it with a grenade launcher. I decided he would. Whiners always find ways to compensate for their shortcomings. Lane probably had a bolter, just like Pam, but he moved stiffly enough that I wondered if he hadn't opted for a Kar-24 submachine gun. It's a nice weapon and spits out enough ordnance to clear the street in front of us. The fact that he'd be firing through me to do so diminished my appreciation for the weapon's efficiency, but kept me mindful of its lethality. If Lane was packing a Kar-24, that choice and Pam's clear anxiety told me they'd tangled with something very nasty and very recently. I'd have had to be as dense as Klaus not to figure out the problem revolved around Ragathol and whatever he did on Luna. The coincidence of a woman having gone from Luna to Venus and back suggested to me that Lorraine Colvin might be involved in all this. Intentionally or otherwise, Cybertronic had tossed me in the middle of something that involved the Dark Legion, and the prospect of that was enough to make me beg Pam to pull the trigger. The Dark Legion is something about which little is really known by most humanity. It's spoken of in hushed whispers, much in the same way the Mafia or the Yakuza or triads are discussed. Everyone wants to know more and to share rumors, but almost nothing of substance circulates concerning them. For those people who do think about the Dark Legion at all, it sounds like a sixth corporation rising up to oppose the Brotherhood and the corporate cartel. Most of the best stories about the Dark Legion come from folks like Pam and Lane. Ex-soldiers occasionally talk about things they saw in the jungles of Venus or on the wasted red surface of Mars. Animated and altered corpses and huge citadels dominate these tales, imbuing them with a mystical element that makes them easy to disbelieve. In fact, many people accept the idea of the Brotherhood's deliberate dissemination of such improbable stories to vilify new, up-and-coming corps. Their anti-Cybertronic rhetoric is famous, and that bit of crying wolf makes it harder for them to get across the idea of how much of a threat the Dark Legion poses to mankind. Corps, being more prudent or alarmist than the general populace, had taken the threat as real enough to de-technify their offices and facilities. Cybertronic saw that as about as wise as cutting a hangnail at the knee. Despite the decision to cripple themselves, the other corps still managed to remain competitive. That included keeping troops in the field, fighting against whatever the Dark Legion was. It struck me that if that Nephirite thing was real, and mentioning his name was enough to get a reaction out of Pam and the others, it meant they'd seen enough to convince them the Dark Legion was more than war stories and rumors. At least it was a working hypothesis, and I decided to put it to the test. Which of you pumped ordnance into Ragathol? Klaus frowned at me. None of us shot him. Only Lane and Pam saw him, and they didn't even know his name until... Ouch! He grabbed his left ear, which was burning red from where Pam had cuffed him. What did you do that for? Think about how much intel you just gave him, if he's one of them. Oh. I let Klaus's expression hit the depths, then begin to soar back to Bauhausian heights before I spoke again. So then, you weren't part of the crew that tagged him on Venus? I got a reaction from all of them, but Pam shook her head once she'd wiped the surprise off her face. Nice try, Rex. Just making conversation. Sure. Look, we'll take all the intel you want to give us. Yeah, we can use it to confirm what you tell us later. I screwed my head around and gave Klaus a wall-eyed stare. The only thing I'll tell you, my boy, is how to build up those pecs so your chest can have more definition than your chin. At ease, Klaus. Faye joined our little group and caught Klaus's wrist before he could backhand me. Bill's paid, and our back trail is clear. Good. We go down here. Pam waved me toward a rusty, old wrought iron set of stairs. Corrosion bubbles cracked beneath the soles of my feet, and the metallic clumping of our footfalls echoed between levels. We were heading down to level 4, which in this district was built on bedrock. There were some building complexes that did not extend down far into the moon's ancient flesh, but they were not part of a common level and could only be accessed from within the corporate towers. We cut through an alley and came out into the middle of what looked to be a confrontation between two street gangs. Lane produced his Car 24, and Klaus showed me that his gun did have a grenade launcher grafted to it. That display of hardware convinced the Toad Warriors they wanted to give us a wide berth. We passed on without incident, then went down more steps to a pair of basement apartments in a building that looked a lot like the Capitol Safe House in terms of age and upkeep. Pam knocked on the door, then identified herself. A skinny kid with a lank of black hair hanging down in front of his almond eyes opened the door, then stood back. Zowie, Pam, you didn't say you'd captured a heretic. Quiet, Wiz. Pam dragged me over the threshold and presented an Asian man whose stiff formality had Mishima written all over it. Slender, but not emaciated like the kid at the door. He wore black hair in a stiff brush cut a lot of Mishima troopers favored. His hair had gone white at the temples, and I was surprised he had not colored it in keeping with his otherwise youthful appearance. He looked me over, then shifted his gaze to Pam. I'm pleased to see you, my friends, but I believe our business was finished some weeks back. What is the meaning of this? Lane closed the door and took up a position beside it, while Klaus appropriated what was a chair hiding beneath dirty clothes camouflage. Faye stood by Klaus, and Pam kept her gun on me, while the kid retreated to a computer station, ducked his head within a virtual reality helmet, and started humming. Releasing the handful of my jacket shoulder, Pam frowned heavily. Something weird is going on, and it involves Ragathol. The Mishima man did not react, but the kid offered triple Zowie as a measure of his surprise. Pam continued. Rex met us at the Midnight Sun. He took a swig of Green's Weitzer, then passed out. Coming to, he mentioned Ragathol. The man looked at me again, but kept his face impassive. What did he say exactly? Klaus shifted around in the chair to get comfortable. It sounded to me like, then Ragathol, I will consume you too. I shook my head. I said, then Ragathol, we shall consume you as well. You have to remember that imperial we, Klaus. I extended my hand toward the Asian man. Rex Dent, freelancer, at your service. Do I want your service, Mr. Dent? I kept my hand out. Probably not as much as I apparently need your help, Mr. He took my hand and shook it. I am a Yojimbo. What makes you think I can help you? Mentioning the Nephirite's name put the fear of the Cardinals into my friends here, and they immediately brought me to you. If I'd fallen down sick, I expect they'd have taken me to a doctor. They saw something else wrong with me and brought me to you. I may not be an accountant, but I can add 2 and 2. Your deduction is warranted, but I do not know if I can be of assistance to you. How did you come to know the name Ragathol? My brain clicked through a dozen different stories before I decided to tell the truth. Because of the Mark II drug supplied by Cybertronic, I analyzed and rejected my alternatives so quickly that no one in the room had any idea I'd hesitated. I opted for the truth because it minimized the chances of anything I said conflicting with the information they had. With Pam still pointing her gun at me, and with Lane at the door behind me, my life depended on not disappointing Yojimbo. It works the way Pam laid it out, except that from the inside, I fell into some sort of fugue. I felt trapped inside a foreign body. I couldn't move more than bowing my head, and I wasn't really in control of things anyway. Ragathol knelt at my feet, and he was afraid of me. What do they put in that Weitzer anyhow? LSD? Clucked Klaus. Pam hissed, and that shut him up. I continued. Whatever I was reaming Ragathol out for failing. Specifically, I was angry at his having screwed up here on the moon. He lost something that further conversation told me was a woman. She ended up on Venus, and he had made another grab at her. He failed in holding on to her, and it cost the Dark Legion one of their citadels. This did not please us. Now the woman is back in Luna City, and Ragathol is going to try for her again. Yojimbo's hands slowly tightened into fists. This is most distressing. WizKid, can you get any confirmation on the location of the woman? The kid pulled the VR helmet on and started to work. Unlike Cybertronic folks, unmarked people have to use normal sensory inputs to access subreal. What I see when communicating with the computers that run Luna City is built out of images taken from my own brain. In the kid's case, everything he saw came from a graphic software package. I had my onboard computer open up my subreal receptors. Under normal circumstances, they were kept shielded because the background inputs from watches, toasters, digital radios, and the occasional underground computer rig, like the kids, were enough to drive us crazy. All computer chips put out radio waves, and we can pick them up, but unless we're in close proximity to them, they make no more sense than having a million songs playing at the same time. The kid's apartment had enough shielding in the walls to keep this machine undetected from the outside. That meant the insulation was sufficient to filter out the incoming interference from outside the room. I was able to identify and block input from everyone else, leaving me open to eavesdrop on the operations of his computer network. Once my onboard system managed to find the right translator, I rode through the subreal on the kid's shoulder. He was good, He surfed on through the data waves, as well as anyone I'd seen when I'd ventured out into the public networks. While the Megacorps had cut down on their computers and isolated themselves from outside influence, the everyday existence and functioning of the world required data exchanges. The kid punched right into the nexus for the most traffic-intensive exchanges and settled himself into the waves rolling between the real world and insurance companies. The kid sifted through Luna Port Authority reports to big insurance carriers and was able to isolate a passenger manifest for a capital ship named Gabriella that landed on Luna and had come in on a priority course from Atlantis Station on Venus. While there were other ships that had arrived from Venus before the Gabriella, each of them had been traveling at more economical speeds, putting their time of departure from the second planet at more than a month back. I assumed his selection satisfied some internal criteria, because he came back out of Subreal the second he snagged the list. Got something. The Gabriella came in straight from the Big V. Only 27 passengers, and half a dozen of them were flagged duty-free. They were also carrying a ton of equipment between them. Lane whistled respectfully. Those are some elite troops. In the Banshees, we'd sometimes do temporary duty to show off for the bigwigs. TDY with our rigs and ammo always got us a duty-free pass through customs. The Gabriella also had one SecMed case, supposed to be an 80-year-old woman come back to Luna to see her family before she dies. Name is Loretta Corin. I nodded. I think her real name is Lorraine Coven. Not terribly inventive when assigning aliases those Capital Clerk 2s. Pam laughed. Mitch Hunter, our CEO in the Banshees, used to pitch a fit about that. They called him Winchell Jaeger, which was not far enough from his own name to suit him. The kid looked over at Pam. Did you say Winchell Jaeger? Is he on the list? Duty-free and everything. Yojimbo, if Capital wanted to keep the woman safe, they would have put her in Mitch's care. Lane eased himself back against the wall. Mitch is tough enough to bite a Nephirite's spikes off and use them to crucify the monster. Someone did pump some fire into Ragathal's middle. Probably Mitch. Pam gently nodded me with her bolter. Anything else you forgot to tell us? You got it as straight as I do. I concentrated for a moment, then nodded. Oh yeah, Ragathal indicated there are still some folks loyal to the Dark Legion on Luna. I guess those would be the heretics the kid referred to. Very good, Mr. Dent. Yojimbo thoughtfully cupped his chin with his left hand. Are you one of them? I tend to leave weird things alone. I even cross the street to stay out of the cathedral's shadow. Given that the Brotherhood fights the Dark Legion, this does your case no good, Mr. Dent. I see that, Yojimbo. Ask Lane and Pam. They know me. Pam and I met him about 16 months ago. We've done some light jobs together. Pam nodded. Dent's a sweet talker who is good at distracting folks. Not bad in a fight. Never weird, though. He's a lancer with corpse tastes. Their testimony on my behalf appeared to satisfy Yojimbo, but I noticed Pam still didn't holster her pistol. I smiled, hoping to thaw her reserve, but her gun never even quivered. I said I know you, Rex, but I'm still not sure how much I can trust you. I don't understand. Yojimbo smiled easily enough that I felt uncomfortable. You evidence some hostility toward the Brotherhood, yet you came up with a name that was provided to us by a Brotherhood contact. And you think I might be a Brotherhood plant, trying to smoke out a leak? That is a far more simple explanation than believing you stepped into the mind of something powerful enough to make a Nephirite kneel before it. That story makes no sense. Good point, but truth is always going to be stronger than fiction, because fiction has to make sense. Yojimbo looked surprised. You quoted the philosopher Mark Twain. Actually, that was in a fortune cookie I got a week ago in the Aristillus sector at Tengu Tavern. The point is, I'm not lying to you. If I were an inquisitor, I just kidnapped a lot of you and see what you knew. Speaking of what you know, Mr. Dent, how did you know the woman's name was Lorraine Colvin? I met Yojimbo's questioning stare evenly. How did you come to be chasing a Nephirite around in Luna City? The Asian man clapped his chin once and laughed. I'm afraid that will have to be secret for now. And the answer to your question will have to remain a secret for now. I respect this. Klaus sniffed. I can beat the answer out of him. You could try. Pam slid her bolter into its holster. You accept what Rex said? Yojimbo nodded. Remnants of the heretic community here have had the better part of 6 weeks to try to avenge themselves on us, and they have not. Either they do not know who we are, in which case they could not have sent Mr. Dent to you, or they do know who we are and could have slain us when we buried Vic. The Brotherhood sanitized the Dark Legion Enclave and, had they decided we were a risk, could have slain us easily. Parts of this story have to be confirmed. I think before we trust him, we should do more digging and consult your associates concerning the return of Ragasol to Luna City. He gestured toward the door. I suspect you have people you wish to speak with as well? I do. A shiver ran down my spine, and I fought to control it. This Nephirite, this is serious trouble, yes? It gets no more serious, Mr. Dent. Yojimbo waited for Lane to open the door, then followed me and paused in the threshold. Be careful, Mr. Dent. You have been touched by evil. Do not let it consume you. Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 3, Dementia, by Michael A. Stackpole. Chapter 7, End.